In the dark, more concerns about project to redevelop National Heroes Park. Residents say they have little info. This evening, reactions at the RJR Gleaner Group's Town Hall meeting. Good evening and welcome to Primetime News on air and online at onespotmedia.com. I'm Archibald Gordon.
And I'm Doreen Samuels. Also this evening, we are listening. Jamaica House says it has heard the concerns and will respond.
Currency Blues, Bank of Jamaica Governor joins us live to discuss the dollar.
A survivor's story. Victim of human trafficking speaks out in the hope others will be saved.
Pay more hospital user fees to increase on August 1.
And in business news, reprieve at the pumps. Gas prices ease from an all-time high.
There's also sports commentary and weather in the primetime package. But before the break, the feedback question.
This evening we're asking, are you any clearer about plans for the redevelopment of the National Heroes Park?
Share comments online, facebook.com/Television Jamaica and tweet at Television Jam.
Please stay with us. Primetime News returns after this break.
Welcome back to Primetime News.
Special welcome to folks on onespotmedia.com.
Our first this evening, emotions ran high in the first RJR Gleaner Group Town Hall on Tuesday as residents and stakeholders in and around National Hero Circle grilled the Urban Development Corporation UDC for answers on the redevelopment of the park.
The government has proposed to build a new Parliament building in the park, and residents are worried it will mean they will be relocated.
But as General Manager of the UDC, Dr. Damien Graham, tried to shed light on the project, the residents say they left the town hall feeling more in the dark about what is to happen. TVJ's Anthony Lugg was at the town hall and has that story.
Facing the brunt of the fire was General Manager of the Urban Development Corporation, UDC, Dr. Damien Graham. He had to respond to multiple questions about the details of the plans for the area and the fears of residents about their potential displacement. Residents spoke strongly about a lack of information on the project, particularly about whether they will be relocated and how they will be compensated. They expressed concern about land ownership and how compensation will be determined, and warned of possible public disruption if things are not done smoothly and to their satisfaction. One resident who identified herself as Tina welcomed the development.
Answers about the redevelopment of Heroes Park.
I realize that this government have this do as you please mentality and this bullyism, but people from Almontown, the generations and generations of persons from Almontown will not tolerate it, and we will stand up against it. And if the government believe that we are going to sit back and allow them to come in and relocate us and displace us from our families, it is not going to happen.
The park currently holds a number of monuments and is also used for recreational activities. But in a few years, it's expected to look like this. Part of government announced plans some 2 years ago to construct a new parliament building and other structures. Since then, residents in neighboring communities have been concerned. Things were no different at the town hall meeting. Emotions were high as residents felt they were not getting clear responses from the General Manager of the Urban Development Corporation, UDC, Dr. Damien Graham.
You believe that you are skillful, but the implementation strategies mentioned, they are not practical and they are not clear. They are very weak.
The people wanted answers on several issues, particularly land acquisition and if, when and where they'll be relocated.
The SDC is going to be working with the UDC to go on veranda to veranda to work out the plan with the people. So we're co-creating it. There is no plan yet. So the details of that has to be worked out with the people in the social intervention to be done.
But relocation is contemplated.
Within the community.
Yes.
So for the parcels that are vacant, we will have to create the housing, move people into that space so that we can work on the different stages. But we don't have the details of that yet.
But even as Dr. Graham attempted to respond to questions, it was obvious that consultation was lacking.
Dr. Graham said that the UDC and others are at the conceptualization, the higher level thinking stage, and that because they're at this higher level thinking stage, it's not yet the point at which you engage with the public. I would like to say to Dr. Graham and through him to the UDC and the government of Jamaica that it is precisely at these points that you want to engage the public.
chairman for the UDC, Ransford Braham, intervened.
In order for us to improve, there will have to be some changes. And in order to bring some changes, it means that we have to talk to you when we are ready. It don't make sense coming to talk to you and we don't know where we're going to put you. We don't know, the plans are not detailed enough to satisfy you that you can be put in this area in your community or that area is going to be a football field. We have to do some preliminary planning before we come talk to you. We're not trying to fool you, you know.
But even with that assurance by the UDC chairman,
we stand firm with development because we believe in it. We want to live like persons are living in Cherry Gardens and Norbrook. But we do not want to be displaced. And Mr. Holness, I'm warning you. We're going to be out here. I'm warning you.
Anthony Lugg, TVJ News.
Meanwhile, there's still uncertainty about whether local architects will be part of the team designing the new Parliament building. That issue was also raised at the Town Hall meeting. TVJ's Janella Precious reports.
What will the new House of Parliament complex look like? After raising ruckus about the direction in which the government appeared to be going, local architects were invited to participate in a design competition launched in May. Prior to that, the government signed a memorandum of understanding with China Construction Company of America for the provision of consultancy services for the design concept of the project. The UDC says it received responses from over 200 architects in Jamaica and the diaspora. A total of 37 teams have registered to participate in the competition. But here's the problem.
You will notice, and I hope those architects that are engaged in the competition have noticed, there is nothing in the design brief that says if your design wins, it will be used. There is nothing there that says that. So somebody needs to indicate whether there's any guarantee whether the local designs are that there is a duty to use them any at all.
UDC General Manager Dr. Damien Graham attempted to explain the process.
There is an express reservation for any one of the designs or whichever is selected, whether it is 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5 in the final phase to be used.
I don't understand what that means.
We have to get to a contract.
No, man, I don't understand what that means. You said there is an express reservation.
There are 5 persons in the final phase that will be considered for judgment. And they will come first, second, or third. A contract will emanate from that decision. If number 1 does not want to do it, the government cannot force them. And so we have to reserve and preserve the right of the participants as well. It's not just about saying that the winner will do it. Okay. It has to be preserved.
As it relates to the MOU with the Chinese,
there is no other consideration that the UDC is aware of for the actual construction and procurement of any construction related to the projects that are currently being discussed.
Janella Precious, TVJ News.
In the meantime, the Office of the Prime Minister, OPM, says it has started the process of addressing some of the issues that were raised in the town hall. At today's post-cabinet press briefing, the Prime Minister's press secretary, Naomi Francis, said discussions have already started.
I know that the management of the UDC has huddled, has tweaked some of the plans they have. They've also listened to a number of the points raised last night, and will incorporate them in plans that they have going forward.
She said changes have also been made to improve communication between the planning entity and residents.
The SDC will also be brought into the whole matter to ensure that the people on the ground will have some amount of communication going forward as well.
Meanwhile, Dr. Horace Chang, who is acting as Prime Minister, says under the redevelopment project there will be dislocation but not displacement.
Basically, you have a big area spotted out, like we had in Olympic, a small area with about 12 families. You have not only spot the whole building that is falling apart if you're going to resettle them. And so you have to relocate them for some time and then rebuild them and put them back in there. That's what basically the difference in dislocation. If you're removing them, you move them out of their place and send them somewhere like happened in the old days when people were moved from all parts of downtown Kingston and sent to Central Village and those places. Nobody intends to do that, but there has to be some disruption and dislocation because they have to rebuild.
He added that the National Housing Trust will be providing low-income housing to persons earning $10,000 or less per week. Meanwhile, Dr. Chang also responded to concerns about a lack of consultation with affected residents.
I don't think we're late, and I think
but they do. This is not coming from me. This is coming from them. They're saying, yes, you are late.
Look, we have worked in politics for 30 odd years. If we meet with them next month and sit down and explain to them what we're doing every day, it has become a lot of
That is so contemptuous.
No, it is not.
It really is.
What they want, they on. What the people are looking for, they want ideas, they want vision, and then they discuss the details with you. I can't just go down and say, what would you like to do with Kingston?
Why?
Because they themselves are not sure of what. No, in the center, this is where I say it's but you can't, they are used to certain standards. What they'd be quite happy with if we just repair all the houses in West Kingston, in downtown Kingston. You give them one day repair what they're doing, and as one lady said. But that's not enough for the future of Kingston.
The acting Prime Minister was speaking on RGR's Beyond the Headlines with Dion Jackson-Miller.
Our top story this evening, residents raise concern about how the redevelopment of National Heroes Park will affect them. The UDC answers, but people say they are still in the dark. Still ahead, currency blues. BOJ Governor joins us live to discuss the dollar. And in business news reprieve, pump prices ease off all-time high. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Primetime News. Now to another hot button topic, the sliding Jamaican dollar. It's been going up and down recently, and now it costs $133.60 to buy $1. Now yesterday it was at a record high of 134 Jamaican dollars to buy $1. We have with us the Governor of the Bank of Jamaica, Brian Winter, to help us understand what is happening. Good evening, Mr. Winter. The dollar reached an all-time low against U.S. currency on Tuesday. Why is it getting weaker?
Well, I would say that the exchange rate, if we look at just a broader perspective, the exchange rate in the last year has depreciated by 3.8%. That you can compare to what has happened to the exchange rate over the average, let's say, of the last 3 years, which is 4.5%. So when you look at an exchange rate, if you measure where it is compared to where it was at its lowest most recently, you may see a steeper movement. But if you look over time, you'll see that it's a more gradual change. And that's because the exchange rate is now moving up and down in cycles. There have been 5 cycles like this over the last year or so. And we expect that to continue. So the exchange rate can be expected to go up and down.
So, in fact, that was an argument you made over the review period, July to September 2017. You talked about the fact that the foreign exchange market has moved from being a market where the exchange rate constantly drifts upward to a more normal two-way market. In other words, it will go up and down. I want you to tell us what you're seeing this year. Are you seeing that up and down, or are you seeing constantly up?
We are seeing exactly the same thing. A continued up and down. From January this year, I would say, if you look at it, we've seen 2 or 3 cycles of up and down since January this year. So that's going to continue because that's a flexible market that is really, people might say, well, why is that happening? It's responding to the demand and supply changes that occur from day to day, from week to week. But, you know, in a way, the question about the exchange rate, there's a lot of focus on it, but it's what's important and what the bank focuses on is on is on the prices of goods and services that people buy, and the exchange rate affects it, but it's not the same thing.
On that point, should consumers be concerned?
I think consumers should focus on inflation. And inflation, when I say inflation, I mean the Consumer Price Index, which is Statin, the Statistical Institute, measures regularly and has done for a very long time a basket of goods and services that the average Jamaican buys, consumes, uses. That's food stuff. It's your cell phone. It's your rent, your taxi fare, and all the different things that people have to spend for their families and themselves. For the average Jamaican, and just measures how is the price changing over time. So when I say inflation, and when I say that the Bank of Jamaica focuses on inflation, What I'm saying is that we're focusing on how does the price in that basket move. And our job is to make sure that the movement of those prices is as low as is consistent with as low as possible, but that also doesn't cause us to act in ways that makes it difficult for Jamaica to grow, difficult for jobs to be created. And so the inflation rate in all of this discussion now, the inflation rate at June, which is the most recent data for Jamaica, is 2.8%.
So price increases of 2.8%.
Exactly.
The other part of that, consumers are one thing, are business people. You've made the argument that where business people, particularly people who use foreign exchange, are concerned, one of the issues there is that they have to also plan better. Are you seeing that?
I think it's very important always, and successful businesses, to say that to somebody who understands that and runs a business is almost an insult. But really, we're all trying, and the fact is that you cannot be successful if you're not planning carefully. The exchange rate has to factor into that. And what we're really saying, is that as you organize your demand, as you talk to your banker, as you plan ahead, you should be able to reduce your exposure to the fluctuations of this exchange rate going up and down. Obviously, you're happy if you can buy when it's cheap. You're very unhappy if you're forced to buy when it's expensive, as it goes up and down. And so we are encouraging the development, and I think this is going to happen reasonably quickly for Jamaicans, of what's called a kind of foreign exchange contract that lets you buy your foreign exchange in advance, okay? And you lock in the price. It costs a bit more, but then you're not exposed to it going up or down. And so once these tools are readily available, then businesses will be making that choice, as they do all over the world in countries that work with floating flexible exchange rates, to choose how much of their future commitments do they lock in and pay a little bit more for, and how much do they leave exposed to the fluctuating.
You're talking
exchange
about
rate.
hedging, essentially.
Hedging, exactly. And the kind of products. In fact, the name for what I'm talking about is called a forward contract, but that would require more time, I think, to talk about exactly what it means and how it works. And I know if you can give me time at another time, I would be delighted to.
Well, I'm being told to wrap, but I have one question in the context of what you've said. You've said we're seeing periods of up and down. Generally, the rate isn't of the valuation of the dollar isn't that much larger than before. Inflation is your main focus, especially in the context of growth. So what explains the fact that you're making all of these arguments, but consumers are saying the dollar is running up, what's happening? Are you failing at your communication efforts?
Well, I would say that consumers get concerned when the exchange rate is adverse and not in their favor. And that's natural. That's understandable. And I don't think we should, you can't make that go away. Why would you be happy to pay more? And when it's going the other way, the up and down movement, you've noticed that nobody's talking. But it actually happens. The facts are there. I think what's important is that we are focused at the central bank, and that's what we're charged with keeping prices for overall, on average, stable. And achieving that is the best way to create the conditions for Jamaicans to have the kind of investment and development that really creates the growth and job creation. That's really what we're seeking. I mean, but on the exchange rate, we want to be sure also that you don't have a shortage of foreign exchange. And when we see a shortage, the central bank that means there's just not enough dollars there, that's when we step in and we sell. We are not seeing a shortage now because Jamaica actually has adequate foreign exchange.
All right, thank you so much, Governor of the Bank of Jamaica, Mr. Brian Winter. To our next story now. This evening, a primetime news look at an ongoing complaint from scores, if not hundreds, of taxpayers. That complaint, employees who say they see deductions from their salaries which are not being paid over to the relevant authorities. TVJ's Herman Green reports.
Monthly statutory deductions from salaries. Payslips reflect them, but workers don't know where they go. Our newsroom has been flooded with calls from irate employees who complain that after years of paying NHT, they are turned down when applying for refunds from the trust. For fear of victimization, persons have refused on-camera interviews, but head of compliance at the NHT, Damian McNally, confirmed that it is a problem.
In any of our given business units across the island, you'll probably hear about in these queries, probably 1 or 2 each day.
He, however, refused to give details on the companies implicated in these cases. President of the Union of Clerical, Administrative and Supervisory Employees, UCASE, Vincent Morrison, says he has seen more of these cases than he can count. He says the complaints come from all sectors.
The retail, dry goods and retail sector, followed by the security guard industry, then agricultural industry. It's a big problem there. It happens in the public sector, especially at the lower levels.
The NHT says each case is investigated before action is taken. The annual returns filed by employers in March should have the details of all employees to whom the payments belong. They say in some cases, an individual may have been left off that list because of missing details.
When it is that the annual return is filed, and we compare the payments that are made throughout the year with the total on the annual returns, if it is that there is a short payment or no payment, we engage the employers again. And where it is that it has been established that either there's a genuine no payment position or a genuine short payment position, again, there are enforcement measures all the way up to litigation.
But the UK's head says he's not satisfied. He believes the NHT is being soft on delinquency. Considering the prevalence of the issue, he suggests that stronger action should be taken.
If you don't make an example of these companies, then you're going to have this thing continuing perpetually. I can't see why NHT at this time has refused to take strong positive action.
By law, employers are to deduct 2% of each employee's gross salary, add a 3% contribution to it to make a 5% payment to the tax office for the NHT. This qualifies a contributor to housing benefits from the trust as well as a refund of the contributed amount after 7 years. Herman Green, TVJ News.
This evening, the compelling story of a Jamaican woman who was a former victim of human trafficking, now an ambassador for victims of the illicit trade. Shamir Mackenzie told the tragic tale of being in bondage for 18 months in the criminal underworld in New York City. She was a guest at the first ever Human Trafficking International Conference in Trelawney today. TVJ's Kalisha Williams attended the conference and now reports.
With a warm and friendly personality, Shamir Mackenzie, a former victim of human trafficking, took the stage on Wednesday in Trelawney to tell her story.
I wanted to be a track star. And I remember telling my mother she will not pay for my college tuition because I was going to run my way to college.
That dream became a reality a few years later. But after encountering several roadblocks, she lost her scholarship and was on the verge of dropping out. Painting a vivid picture, she says while crossing the streets of New York, she came in contact with a man who would change her life forever.
We exchanged numbers, and over a period of time, we had great conversations that I enjoyed talking about: politics, single parents in the community, the prison industrial complex, and other social justice issues. Those were the conversations we had. He said he was a graduate of Morehouse College, which is a very prestigious college in the United States.
A friendship ensued, and that's where the drama unfolds.
When we talk about human trafficking, we always think of the kidnapping, and that does happen. We think of people getting drugged, and that does happen. But oftentimes these traffickers befriend victims and develop a level of trust between victims.
No soon after taking up the man's offer to occupy his basement apartment, he told her he had a way for her to make quick cash. She reluctantly agreed, desperate to find her college tuition.
And I remember him putting me in the first club, and in 2 hours I made $300. And I started to do the math. 2 hours, $300. In no time, I'm going to get this $3,000. I'm going to be enrolled in school, and the rest will be history.
But again, things took a turn for the worst.
Abuse continued where I was tortured, raped, sodomized, and witnessed other horrific acts being done to other victims. And there was nothing that I can do about it.
Still not knowing this man, her newfound friend, a good Samaritan, was a human trafficker.
When I wanted to leave, he said, if you leave, I know where your mom lives. I know what time you shared with me, what time your grandmother goes to work. That's 4 a.m. She's alone on these streets. So if you leave me, I will kill your family if I can't get to you.
She explained she spent 18 months in bondage and torture, and it was not until the police caught up on her trafficker that she managed to escape.
The only scar that I can visibly remember is the cut on my ear from a razor blade. But any other cuts on my body that the FBI took pictures of, if I don't look at those pictures, I don't remember because those scars are healed. But that psychological scar, it's a lifetime.
Now a free woman, she uses their story to empower victims across the world. So I was told over the past 5 years, at least 80 million people worldwide experience some form of modern-day slavery, with Jamaica being frequently targeted because of its geographic location. Tomorrow we'll look at how human trafficking is fueling criminal organizations in Jamaica and how children could be exposing themselves to predators online. Kelisha Williams, TVJ News.
It's the middle of the summer and concerns continue to grow among health experts about the safety of children. Consultant neurosurgeon Dr. Roger Hunter is cautioning parents to be extra careful now, as children are often likely at risk for injuries so severe they could even die. TVJ's Shamela Mitchell-Pullen reports.
Health Report is brought to you by
Nestle Lactogen 3, digestive comfort that shows.
Like Christmas, summer is one of the happiest times of the year, especially for children who are out of school, playing and having lots of fun. However, having fun is good, but the necessary supervision, especially for younger children, is important to prevent accidents.
Sadly, we have seen patients die. Kids die from, in both situations, falling from heights or being hit down by cars. We have seen kids who have not died but been left with lifelong injuries from severe motor vehicle accidents. Certainly here and in London, where I was a consultant, I've seen many significant patients who have been hit down crossing the roads. And this also applies to teenagers, not just young kids.
It's not just injuries from a fall or a motor vehicle crash. Children can hurt themselves by playing with fire or swimming without the proper gear or a lifeguard around. Another fear is that some children are too afraid to report when injuries occur. Dr. Hunter says this can make the injury worse, and as simple as some are, it can be deadly.
So they may well have had an injury earlier in the day. They didn't report it, but it's a significant injury. They may have lost consciousness. It's really important that as a parent you be very extra vigilant around your child, check for bruises, because they may feel fine at the moment of injury, but 6 hours later they can develop what's called an extradural hematoma that can result in them dying if it's missed.
Meanwhile, Dr. Hunter gave this advice to parents and guardians.
Some sensible things would be, for instance, engaging in summer school. Enrolling the children in summer school can help to keep them out of harm's way. Church-oriented facilities also can help to provide activities for kids. Summer camps can also be important. A community raises a child. If you have a strong local community, you could perhaps come together, and then parents perhaps could take turns in terms of supervising the local kids.
With their health report, I'm Shamela Mitchell-Pullen, wishing you good health.
Health Report is brought to you by
Nestle Lactogen 3, digestive comfort that shows.
A reminder that our current affairs program, All Angles, is at 8:30 this evening, and Dion Jackson-Miller is here with a preview. Dion?
Thank you so very much, Doreen. Well, last week on All Angles, we spoke about criminal convictions and rehabilitation. This week, we're going to hear from people who have direct and personal knowledge of this issue of being convicted, attempting rehabilitation, and the treatment of society. So make sure you tune in. It's going to be great. That's going to be 8:30 right after primetime news. Right now, it's back to you.
Thank you, Dion. And time now for the responses from our friends on Facebook and Twitter, and Archie is at the smartboard.
Thanks, Lorraine. Here's our question this evening asking, are you any clearer about the plans for the redevelopment of National Heroes Park? Here's our first comment. I watched from the start to finish. I'm confused. Dr. Graham, that's the UDC head, looks like him don't know what clock a strike. People them streetwise, so the big words them can't fool them, sir. Second comment, no, too much angry residents trying to send a message. We're not for sale, we're not moving, nobody listening to what was being said. Third comment, I could see the discomfort in Dr. Graham's face every time they call his name to answer a question. I don't think he's aware of his surroundings. Hashtag sleeping. And final comment for this section, whether people get a clearer picture or a foggier one, they really don't care. With or without the conference, the people them concerned still shuffled with sand and cement as the workmen begin their diggings on Heroes Parliament. Not a mistake. Keep your comments coming on Facebook and Twitter, facebook.com/Television Jamaica, and your tweets to @TelevisionJam. Business news and news from overseas after the break.